has issues, but it was a better document, and is still a better document than everything else we have on the planet today. And again, the mimicry is all, the prize, the attack, everything that's centered around what is going on is an attack upon and an affront upon your liberty to convince you to do one thing, to surrender your life's time. To convince you to throw out, and I'm using this symbolically because it's not just this, the Bill of Rights, okay? The Bill of Rights is not the property of the U.S. corporate government. It is not the property of any government. The Bill of Rights are the property of we the people of these United States of America. It was created by us to put a chain and a series of chains upon bad government. Because government will always turn bad. Not sort of. Why? Because the more power you give it, the more people that shouldn't be there gravitate towards it. Think about it. How many times have we seen this? You know what's the first thing? The European mindset. Now, we're from Europe, we're from Asia, we're from South America here, we're from all over the planet, guys. But the European mindset that you will hear, that I've watched go into the History Channel in the last 8 to 10 years, is that paranoid form of American government. And you have these jackasses in our American press yapping that way about our system. And what are they talking about in here? The checks and balances that we put upon government so it couldn't go insane. That's that Tory, British, European attitude that, oh, that's just paranoid because you're keeping the government down. Darn right I am. History shows in the last 100 years, and it's not Christianity that killed a whole bunch of people. In fact, it's a bunch of flat-out godless socialists who did more to stack people like cordwood in the last 100 years than anybody's done in the last 4,000 years, even with broadswords and battle axes. In fact, I described for you just one element of what was a machine and has been a machine that has plugged itself in and killed people so mechanically that it's impossible for most people to understand. Now, there's another reason for that, because again, we're isolated. We're intentionally isolated. Ron Paul for president. If you can do this, and this is why I always bring this up, if you can do this before you right now who claim that, and there's people who say, well, we can do anything we want, we can say anything we want, and we'll get the message out. I supported Ron Paul and support Ron Paul 100%. But if any of you listen to me, you'll know what I said, and I do not want to hear any discouragement. I don't want to hear anybody in the doldrums. I don't want to hear anybody going, ah, man. Because we expected what transpired. And even though I am militant, and by God, you know I am, I will support every peaceable effort possible, even as I prepare to wage war against an enemy that I know I must fight. And I do this because we had a shining example in the history of this nation. That's the Founding Fathers. Because even though, and they knew they were going to war. They knew they were going to war. In 1765, everybody thought the revolution would start. 10 years it took before it actually happened, because every time that the British came out to visit, we stepped out in their face, and there was a point, there was like a force field of energy between the two. And everybody stepped back. And they all came out again, and they went forward, and they picked, and they probed, and they attacked, and they bit, and they chewed, and they stepped back again. Everybody goes, what are you talking about, Mark? Listen, my friend, my children, and you will hear of the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. How many people ever read that poem? And what is the line in that poem? One if by land, and two if by sea. Now, if it's futile to resist, you'll be absorbed, and the Borg are totally in control. Why did the Borg have to sneak out of Boston? Think! The most sophisticated, largest military force on the planet at that time, trained professionals, bar none, had to try and sneak out of Boston to try and catch the Patriots off guard. Which means you have to ask the reverse question. What was the strength and infrastructure of the militia that it was so great that the greatest power on the planet and its minions had to sneak around to get through it? Oh, yeah. Because the whole of the people were armed and they knew how to use their weapons. That's why. And in fact, you might recall, and I always ask this, real quick, I love the way you do it, because we ask questions for a reason. And it's not for you to be embarrassed or to worry about the answers, but rather to move with your mind to the point where when we ask questions, you'll be able to answer just as quickly, correctly. Okay? What year did the Revolutionary War start?
1865.
1765? No, that's okay. 1776 is what most answer, right? Because isn't that what we celebrate, 4th of July?
34th.
1775, April 19th. April 19th, the day of Waco, the day of course, as we know, Oklahoma and all the others. April 19th, 1775, 16 months before the signing of the Declaration of Independence, America went to war. The British snuck out of Boston on the 18th. Paul Revere made his 7th or 9th ride, depending on how you count it. That wasn't his first ride. Every time the British came out, he came back. Went out, came back, went out, came back. Eventually, you remember there's this thing, Johnny Tremaine, where the guards are standing there and go, yeah, that's Paul Revere. Boy, he gets around a lot. He does this a lot. What did they mean by that? They were throwing stuff right in your face in the movie to explain to you history, so that Americans remember this stuff. Well, in 1775, on April 19th, what vote was cast? Who voted? Have we ever gone, like you said, let's go across to the library here. I want someone to show me a copy of the vote that got us into the American Revolution. Does anybody remember? Was it Republicans and Democrats? Was it Tories and Whigs? Was it, Moluccan, headhunters and, Indonesian, rice eaters? No, it wasn't. And as a matter of fact, here's how the thing worked out. British forces got to Lexington Green, and a whole bunch of people were looking at each other. And one guy decided, probably a French and Indian War veteran, about 65 years old, Hal, Otto, we've done this about 7 times, haven't we? Yeah, you're right, Frank. Hey, you know what? Oh, the hell with this. Boom! And a 1-ounce mini ball or a 1-ounce lead bullet was cast as a vote that went down range, and the vote was cast into a red coat. The red coat registered the vote, and then a whole bunch of other lead votes were cast in one direction, and a whole bunch of other lead votes were cast in the other direction. And these